Okay, this is Tico. I'm a team lead for CS24 at Lambda School. I'm recording this video for Elise Spain, one of my students who is having some issues with getting deployed to Heroku with her Django project. And this will also be my first time deploying to Heroku with the Django project as well. So just want to go through step by step and make something for her that she can look at, review, see if there's anything that is happening on her that she isn't doing locally that might be affecting her ability to get deployed to Heroku. So let's do this together. Here we go. So here's our repo for this week's Computer Science Build Week number 1. Our goal here is to create a multi-user dungeon client that also has a server, and we're going to be using Django, which I've actually never used before. And this will also be Elise's first time deploying as well. So we need to create a server. That's the first thing we need to do. We're going to be creating an interesting world on the server. So we're going to need to add rooms to the server, a minimum of 100 connected rooms. And then we'll need to create a client that will be able to display these rooms and will connect to our server. And that client should be able to display a visual map of the world, all the rooms that we created in the back end there. So looking through the repo here, here's some things that we need to be doing. So let's start with learning Django. Okay, so in Sprint 1, you learned new language, built the interactive world with it. This project being learning framework. You find these resources useful. Okay, so let's just run a trial, right, and just see what Django is all about. So we'll click on this. It'll take us to this Intro to Django repo. Okay, README first. Common errors, gotchas, and troubleshooting. Let's check that out first. Okay, so Django is a powerful tool. This can be finicky. This doubles when you try to deploy it to Heroku. Here are some common mistakes and errors and resolutions. Don't forget the period when creating your project. If you miss this, everything will work until you try to deploy. Okay, 12 instructions required to consult outside documentation, several spots. Okay, we're using SQLite locally in Postgres once we deploy to Heroku. Supposedly this is supposed to rarely cause minor issues, but every single one of my students is having issues. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. So we looked at that. Let's go back. Let's go to day 1 intro. How about that? Day 1 intro. First thing, here's a summary of what we'll be doing. And this is just an example repo of how to get Django deployed to Heroku. That's all we're doing today, right now, first, anyways. Okay. So we will let's go to the code. Let's fork this. So let's just fork it. Tico teps. Okay, we are forked. As you can see here, we have Intro to Django through my GitHub, and it's forked right there. So we're gonna click clone or download, then clone with HTTPS. We're gonna click on this copy icon here, and then I'm gonna go over to my Hyper terminal right here, and let's just see where we're at here. Okay, so I'm just gonna go into Lambda projects. We'll see what's in there. Let's make a new directory. We'll call it mkdir. Let's call it CS24. Okay, now I have a CS24 directory here. So let's cd into there, CS24. Okay, should be nothing in there. Yep, there's nothing in there. So we're going to do a git clone, and then we'll just Command V to paste in the copied pathway there to that the URL address. We'll hit enter, and now if we ls, we can see that we have Intro-Django locally now cloned onto our machine. So we will cd into Intro-Django, and there is the master branch, and we've cd'd into Intro-Django. So now we're just going to type in code period, which just means this directory. We'll hit enter, and that should open up VS Code for me. There we go. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this. I'm going to press Control tilde, which is the key that's right underneath the escape button. That will bring up my VS Code terminal. And I just want to move this over to the side. So I'm going to right click in this space here between the terminal and the area where I can pick my default shell. I'm going to right click and I'm going to click Move Panel Right. Makes things a little bit easier to see. Now I have my terminal on the side here. I can even split it so I get two terminals. Boom shakalaka. All right, so first thing I'll do is I'm going to use some best practices. I'm going to switch off of the master branch and create my own branch using git checkout -b for branch. And then I'm just going to call it tico-teps and press enter. Now I've switched over to my own branch. Good. Let's see what's in here. We got day 1, day 2, day 3. Okay, so let's click that. Here we go. Here's a summary of everything we're doing. Let's look at this here. So check Python version and install or upgrade if less than 3.5.x. So let's see what we have going on over here. So the way we check for our Python version is by typing in Python space -- version. So that tells me that Python on my machine right now is 3.7.6. And this command is actually different from typing in Python 3 -- version. As you can see there, it's Python 3 is set to 3.73. But then this one here, which is generally linked to the legacy Python version that comes with your Mac. So this is actually usually like 2.7 or something if you just type in the regular Python space -- version command. But I've set it so that it will automatically run Python 3.7.6. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is check pip version, install or upgrade if less than 10.x. So as we mentioned before, we're at Python 3.7.6, so that's higher than 3.5.x, so we're good on there. But now we are checking pip version. So same thing here. We'll type in pip -- version, and that will give us pip 19.3.1. But it is connected to this here, Python 2.7. So I think what I want to do is, well, I mean, I'm good, right? Pip version, that's technically greater than 10.x. It's 19.3.1, so I'm good. Check pip env version. Let's do that. Pip env -- version 2018 11.26. That is newer than November 6, 2018, so I'm good. Normally you'd make a repo with a readme and a Python git ignore, but since we're going to be using pull requests to turn things in, just fork this repo instead. Okay, so we cloned the repo to the local machine, we did that. In the terminal, navigate to the root folder of the repo, create pipenv virtual environment. So we're going to run this pipenv3 command, which tells pipenv, which is like a package manager. It's like Node, but for Python. And the -- tells us that, oh, right there it says, the -- option tells it to use Python 3. So let's do that. Pip env -- 3. So right now it's creating a virtual environment for this project. It's actually using 3.8.0, which I guess it says is okay. Creating a pip file for this project. So as you can see here, it has created a pip file for us right there. So we're just going to go back to here, and as best practices, I always tell you, we should make commits after each change so that you leave yourself breadcrumbs that you can always go back to if something goes wrong. If you accidentally install something you didn't want to, you could always just use Git. That's what Git is for, right? Git version control. It allows you to go back and see what things were done at certain commits, certain points in time. So let's go over to our terminal. We're going to type in git status, git add period. That just means this directory. And then we're going to do a git commit. And we are going to write our message. Sorry about that. We're going to say creates a pip file for the root directory. Okay. And then we'll do a git push. And watch this. So instead of having to type git push origin, Tico teps every time, if I type in git push, like the terminal will get confused and be like, yo, like, where do you want me to actually send this? It says right that the current branch Tico teps has no upstream branch. To push the current branch and set the remote as the upstream, use this command right here, which will allow me to only have to type in git push anytime I'm in the Tico teps branch, and it will automatically push my changes to the remote branch, which is origin Tico teps. So I won't have to type in git push origin Tico teps anymore. I just have to type in git push, and this command right here will take care of that because it's setting the upstream branch to this. So it's like saying, yo, make this what I push my changes to if I'm in this branch right there. Okay, so I just copied this command, very easy, just Control C or Command C on a Mac, and then Command V right there, and you press enter. Boom shakalaka, takes care of that. Okay, so we have our first commit in there, we're good to go. Another thing that I'm going to do ahead of time, just because I know it's coming, is I'm going to click on this git ignore, and I'm going to add the .venv in there if it's not in there. But it looks like it is in there because it is grayed out right there. And if you want to search for a keyword in a file, you don't want to like scroll up and down, you can hit Command F on a Mac. This little find box pops up, and then you can type in .venv, which is what I'm looking for, and boom, there it is right there. So it's all good to go. So I guess I don't have to change that. Cool. All right, so we're going to go back to the next step here. It says verify that the pip file was created in the root of the repo. So we'll click that. Yep, you have a pip file. Good to go. And we're using Python version 3.8. So we're going to go back to day one, and now it says activate pip env with pip env shell. So if you're somebody who misspells things frequently when you're tired, Elise earlier today spelled, asked her to go to github.com, and she went to guthub.com. So sleep is very important, developers. Get your sleep. So we're just going to copy this here. We're going to come over here to the terminal. We're going to just pip env shell. Boom. So as you can see, we know we are in the shell, which is like the virtual environment. Whenever we see a pair of parentheses with the name of our project inside those parentheses, right? So like my project's name is Intro-Django, and that's what's inside these parentheses. That lets me know that I'm inside of the virtual environment, which is the only place where like any pip env or pip commands will run. Like if you try to run pip down here, it won't know what's going on. Or I guess it does. But yeah, maybe it does. Learn something new all the time. So anyways, either way, you want to run your pipenv, generally your pipenv commands and all your Python commands inside that virtual environment. So we're going to run next. It says here we're using pipenv because it is newer and more robust than, like, I believe pip. Okay, so next thing we're doing is we're going to start a Django project and app, but we have to install Django first. So we're going to come over here and we're going to make sure we're in the terminal that has the virtual environment activated. We're going to type in pip env install Django. And remember, if you're somebody who misspells things and you're tired, just go over here and copy and paste and then plug it in there. That will save you some time, save you some hassle. Okay, so this is installing. Okay, installation succeeded, pip file.lock not found. So it's going to create one for us. Awesome. And like we talked about before, with best practices, we always want to make commits whenever we make changes, right? So let's do a git status here, git add, git commit. Let's do creates, sorry, let's do installs. And I like to put things in parentheses so that I can basically say it's a module. Installs Django module. And the idea with our commit messages is we actually want to be pretty specific. It doesn't, so you got to think of your commit messages as messages you are writing for yourself in the future. Like if you're debugging, think about how annoying or how like frustrating it could be if you are searching through your Git history, the Git log, I mean, which is has your commit history inside of there, and you're just reading like these ambiguous, like just vague messages, like it could be like refactors, like a one-word commit message. That doesn't really help anybody out, you know, and the goal is to help yourself out when you're doing debugging in the future. You can like quickly look at these different commit messages in the Git log, and you can say, okay, well, this one I did this one I did that, okay. But if you don't have something that's right away can tell you what you've done in that commit from the commit message, like it doesn't really help you out. So like this commit message here, I just said installs Django module. I mean, that's very self-explanatory. It tells you what I'm doing, and it tells you in like a present tense, which is just, it's another way of just, it's just my style of writing it, I guess, in present tense. And then I, that way when I'm going through the Git log, it's easy to see like what this one is doing in the present tense. So I'm gonna hit enter. And I'm also going to git push. And remember, I don't have to type in origin tico-teps anymore because I've already set the upstream branch to tico-teps, to origin tico-teps. So now if I hit enter, it'll automatically push it straight to the remote branch, which is origin tico-teps, without me having to actually type it after this git push command here. Okay, next. So we're using a virtual environment instead of installing globally because installing globally would be like using npm or yarn globally. We don't want to do that. So it says here, add pip file and pip file.lock to the repo with git add pip file and commit with git commit -m added pip files. So let's see here. So the git add pip file with a star. And it looks like, I mean, we've already had the pip file in there, so I'm not exactly 100% sure what this is doing. and it says commit, but I think they're just trying to make sure that you, and you can see down here, like I modified the pip file by installing Django, and I already committed it. So I wonder if that's what they're attempting to do here on lines 96 and 97, is just making sure that you are saving the changes you're making to the pip file, which is just keeps track of what packages you've installed. So that way anybody that downloads your repo can run the exact environment that you were running it in to get the exact same results. Okay, so we can go ahead and say that we've completed this because I did commit this when we've already added the pip files. So now it says start a project with Django admin start project, name a project. So, and notice that there's a period right there. That means what? That means this directory that I'm in right now. So we just want to make sure we're in the root directory. So let's ls. Yep, we know we're in the root directory because we see pip file and pipfile.lock here. So those are generally installed inside of root directories. So like I said, if it's too difficult for you to type these commands out, somebody who misspells things all the time, or you're tired from sleep deprivation, just copy, paste. Yeah, actually, I forgot to change the name of the project. Sorry. So we'll copy it, and then we'll go back, and we'll change the name of the project. How about I call it Django example deploy. There we go. Django example deployment, period. Make sure you have that period on the end there. That's super important. Okay. And then Django admins, what allows us access to the built-in functionality or the commands. And so like this is one of those commands called start project. In Django, they have projects, not so much like apps, kind of like React app. So like React app, so like in Django, like the project would be like your app.js, which would have a ton of other components that would go in there. So in Django, I'm assuming that would be like your project is your app.js, and then like individual apps, as they're called in Django, those are like your components, and they all go inside of the Django project. Okay, so let's hit enter. It's not a valid project name. Okay, let's call it, let's see, Django admin start project. Let's call it Django example. And I forgot the period too. Okay, well actually let's do this. So that just shows you right there that I mess up all the time too. Let's go here, we'll go to discard. We'll delete the 6 files that we just made. And we're gonna go back over here. And I'm actually gonna get rid of this here. So let's just delete that. Yep, we're gonna delete that. And if I do a git status here, there should be nothing that changed. Okay, good. So I'm back to square one as if I had not even installed or have not even run the start project command. So let's try that again. Django-admin start project. Now I just don't want to forget the period this time. We're gonna call it Django example. And we're gonna put a space and a period, okay? That means this directory. Okay, now we're good to go. So now we have that over here. And like we talked about before, just wanna make sure we're carrying out best practices by making a commit for every change that we make to leave us breadcrumbs in the future for when we have to debug, which will make it easier for us to debug if there are more commits, more frequent commits. So let's do a git status, git add, git commit, -m, and we're gonna say creates a Django project. And I like to be a little more specific. I even like to type in the command that I run in order to do the thing that that commit is doing. So I'll type in, like, my message would be creates a Django project using the single quote. And I'll just put in the exact thing that I had here. Copy that, paste it here, and I'll put a single quote to close the opening single quote, and then I'll put another set of double quotes because that closes my commit message. Actually, I want to put command, so that's a little more specific. Now I hit enter, boom. Let's do a git push. Okay, cool. So everything's up to speed, and this is just best practice. You should always be making frequent commits. I always push up. I know a lot of people don't push right away, but I feel like if you're working on a project with other people, you should push very frequently, so that way they can keep up with the changes that you're making on your local machine as they're working on their own version on their local machine. It's always a good thing to collaborate well. Okay. So now it says replace name of the project. We did that. The period tells it to create the project in the current directory. We've done that. Verify the name of project folder that was created and boilerplate files. Okay, so we're gonna click on Django example. That's the name of our project, right? And remember, a project in Django is very similar to app.js in React. And just like app.js has multiple components that go into it before it's injected into the virtual DOM, like Django will have like those apps go into its project before it gets put into, before it gets, I guess, rendered to the page. Okay, so they just want to make sure that we actually created the folder with the intended name that we did, and that it has boilerplate files in it, such as init.py, and we do. We have that right here, so you can see. Okay, and it's made up of a collection of apps. We have ASGI, settings, urls.py, WSGI. Okay, cool. So we will exit out of that in the pip file. Next, we have create an app with Django admin, start app, and then the name of the app. Notice there's no period at the end here. So like we talked about earlier, if you're tired, can't spell, just copy and paste. And just make sure to change the name of your app. So we want to call the app notes, as they say here in the directions. So let's call it notes. We'll hit enter. And as you can see, this has popped up over here. You have notes, the notes app now. Let's close that. Note apps now, which has migrations in it, has init.py, and admin.py, apps.py, models, tests, and your views. Looks like our VS Code is also changed. Okay, so this is just telling it to use Python 3.8. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a commit again, because we're following best practices. So git status, git add. And I want you to notice that in this second terminal I have open down here below, this is running just my bash terminal. So I'm not in a virtual environment like I am up here. As you can see, the parentheses with the name of the directory, the root directory, Intro-Django. Whereas down here, I just have ticotep, and it does have like the branch that I'm currently on, just ticoteps in the project I'm in. So yeah, do git add, and we'll do a commit message, git commit -m, and we'll just say creates a new Django app. I'll call it notes using the, and like I said, I just copy and paste that command. So that way when I'm debugging in the future, I know what command I used, and it's a little bit easier to see like the context for that commit. Okay. Enter, there we go, git push, and that will push it to the remote branch. Awesome. Okay, so we're almost halfway done with the day one README. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start the server. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna verify that the name of the app subdirectory has been created. We did. Look over here, it's called notes. Test by navigating to the project folder, root dash name of project, and running manage.py run server. Okay, so we're gonna navigate to the project folder root / name of the project. Okay, so we're gonna go ls, we're gonna cd into Django example. That's what it's telling us to do. So we're now inside of Django example, which right here says project folder. We're gonna go to the root / oh, sorry, I changed that. Root / and name of the project, and running this command right in the terminal. So we're probably, if you have used Python before, you're used to running Python and then giving Python an argument here. Well, you don't have to do that with this. They just want you to run dot / manage.py, which just says like this directory, right? That period, and the / telling us to use this manage.py. That's right. Where is it at? There is no manage.py in there. Anyways, let's just run it. Let's copy that, paste it. Okay, no such file or directory. So I was wrong. You actually need to be in the root directory where there's actually a manage.py file. So let's cd space ... That takes us out one level. We're going to ls to look at where we're at. You can see here we do have a manage.py there. That's where we should be running that. So I don't know, this wording is kind of verify that the name of app subdirectory has been created. Well, the name of my app is notes. Name of my project is Django example, right? Test by navigating to the project folder root. So this is my project folder root, and running manage. Well, you can't run that if you click, I don't know. It should launch the animated rocket default page. Actually, this should be, I want to change this actually. Test by again navigating to the the root directory. Root directory of your, to the root directory where there is a manage.py file available. That I feel like that would be more clear. Test by navigating to root directory to the root directory where there is a manage.py file available, and then run this command right here. Command in the terminal. Okay, so let's save that. So yes, we've made that change. So once again right here, I just amended this this instruction in the README to make it a little more clear. Okay, so let's ls to make sure we know where we're at. There is a manage.py file, so we can run that last command that I tried to run in the subdirectory, which did not work. So we're going to press the up arrow on Mac, and that will allow you to have access to the different previous commands you've already run in that terminal. As you can see here, this is the command I want to run, / manage.py run server. So I'm going to hit enter, and let's see what happens. Okay, so watching for file changes with stat reloader, performing system checks. System check identified no issues, 0 silence. So you might see this red thing and worry, but don't worry because we'll take care of that later. You can see here like this cursor, it's not blinking. This means that it is running, it's waiting to respond and to log things as different IP addresses, I guess, try to access this app that you have open and running, your server. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna head over to, we can go right to here. So see it says command, click to follow. So I'm gonna press command and I'm gonna click. And it's gonna take me straight to, here's our app. Yeah, let me make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so you should have a rocket animation there. Notice the address here. The localhost 8000 address will also work. So you can put http:// localhost 8000, and that should bring up the same thing. Yep. So both of those URLs will work. Okay, so let's go back here, and you can see here on the right, it's logging every HTML request or HTTP request to our server, and every time we're using the browser, we're hitting enter, it is performing a GET request to our server. Okay, so it's working. It says here, this should launch the animated rocket default page. It does. Take note of the warning about unapplied migrations. We'll fix that in a moment. Yes, we noticed that right here. There's 17 unapplied migrations. So it says we'll take care of that in a moment. Django makes it easier to make changes to databases. This is called migrations. We also learned about this with connects, going through the backend curriculum of Lambda. All right, so migrations, run /manage.py show migrations. And remember, this has to be run inside of a directory that has a manage.py file. Otherwise, you won't be able to do that. So we can copy, Command C to copy. This will show a list of outstanding changes that need to occur. To take a closer look at what is being done, you can look at the SQL queries that Django is building. This step is entirely optional and is only for the curious, which should be you. And actually, I don't want to, before we do that, before we talk about migrations, I don't want to violate my good habit of making commits whenever I make a change. As you can see, if you click this, I did make a change to the day1.md file. So let's do that. So let's do a git status, git add, git commit -m, double quote, and we'll say amends instructions for running server. And that's our commit message. So that should be pretty clear when I go back and have to debug for whatever reason. So then I'll do git push. I don't have to type the origin tcode teps because I've already set the upstream branch to the remote git repository, remote origin tcode teps branch on my git repository. Okay, now back to migrations. We're gonna run this exact command right here in the terminal. Like I mentioned before, just copy it, paste it. If you're tired, if you're sleepy, groggy, you feel like you'll spell something wrong, just copy and paste. All right, so we don't actually want to use this terminal anymore. As you can see, we're running Python 3.7 in this upper terminal, and then down here in this lower terminal, we're running bash right there. That's where we make our commits. And then this is where our server is running. And so we don't want to exit out of that, right? Which you just use Control-C to exit out. That server is running. So what we'll do is we'll click this button right here, and we'll split another terminal in there. And as you can see, we are inside of the virtual environment. Allows us to use the pip env and the pip and the manage.py commands. So let's ls, see where we're at. And we actually want to run that command right here because there's a manage.py file here. So we can do that. Is there a manage.py file? No, there's no manage.py file in the notes app. Okay, so we're gonna press Command V because I already pasted it from, or copied that command from earlier. So Command V on a Mac, we'll paste it into your terminal and then you press Enter, boom. So let's see, let's expand this so you can see this a little bit easier here. Okay. All right, so here's a command we just ran, show migrations. So we have an admin, looks like an admin app, an auth app, content types app, sessions app. So these are all things that come pre-built in with Django projects, which is, I guess, a nice thing, right? That it automatically comes with auth and like these administrative features. So yeah, we're looking at all of these migrations that still need to be run. They are not yet run, and do want to explore this a little bit here where it says to take a closer look at what is being done. You can look at the SQL queries that Django is building. This step is entirely optional and is only for the curious, which you should be. So let's run that just to see like what each of these is. So each of these is considered a migration, right? And that's how you make a change to the database. And how do you make the changes to a Postgres database, which is what we're running on our back end here? You make SQL queries, right? So we're gonna run this command. You can just copy it and we can just paste it in here. And then we wanna make sure we change the name of the package, change the name of the migration ID. They even give you an example right here. Look at that. You can actually just copy that, and we'll go back over here. We'll go ahead and delete this command that we accidentally copied in there. Command V to copy in the example command from over here. Enter. And so we see, so if you've ever done SQL queries, this is what's happening here. So these are like the raw queries that Django does on our behalf, which is super nice, automatic. You don't have to type these out. It's creating a table for us. How cool is that, right? Okay, so this will display a large number of SQL commands that may not make sense if you're not yet familiar with SQL. Doesn't actually do anything, just displays information. Okay, cool. So it's just making some tables for us. All right, so now we actually want to run the migrations. So here's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna copy and paste the command here. The ./manage.py should be familiar with that by now. That's like running Python and then like giving it an argument, but like Django's version. So we'll go over here and we can even make sure that we're in the right directory, ls. Oh, there's our manage.py, so that means that we can run this command. So we're just gonna go over here and we're just gonna Command V to paste. We'll hit enter. All right, so just saw what happened there. It says operations to perform, applying all migrations from these apps here, from the admin app, auth app, content types app, and the sessions app. As we showed earlier, if we scroll up, you can see those different ones there, remember? There, 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 and there. And there's no check boxes or no X's in any of these boxes, which means that they hadn't been run before, but we ran the ./manage.py SQL migrate, or sorry, not that one, the ./manage.py migrate command, and that put these OKs after all of them, meaning that they ran the migrations. So we're making changes to our database by doing that. Sweet. All right, and if we come back over here to the markdown file, it says check them by showing migrations again. So we're gonna run that same command, just copy and paste, enter. Now you can see that those migrations that are shown, they all have an X next to them, which means that the migration has been run, which means that the changes have been made to the database. So awesome. says here the list of migrations should show an X for each item, and they do. So that's good. It says run the server again and confirm that the migration warning is not present. There won't be a change to the actual page that renders. Okay, so this is what they're talking about. This red, you have 17 unapplied migrations. The project may not work properly until you apply the migrations for the apps, admin, auth, content type sessions, run python manage.py, migrate to apply them. So this is something that you can run in place of the .manage, ./manage.py command there. Okay, so what we'll actually do is, since I've had my server running the whole time, I can just press Control-C. That will halt the server, and then we're just gonna run it again. And like I mentioned earlier, on Macs, you can press the up arrow in that terminal, and that will give you the previous commands you've already used in that terminal. And this is the command we want to run, ./manage.py run server. We'll just hit enter. Look at that. We have a server that's running, and we have no red message, no red error message, right? It wasn't an error message, I guess more like a warning, right? Because error message would have stopped our server. But yeah, so there's no more warnings. Just like they mentioned here, run the server again and confirm that the migration warning is not present. And like they said, there's not going to be any change to the actual page. So if we scroll, we go back over here. Here's our app, our server. If I hit reload, you can see that we still have a rocket animation. And if I go to localhost, same thing. Let's just stick with localhost. It's a little bit easier to see. So I'm just going to exit out of that other URL address. We'll just stick with localhost. You can see there's no changes. Everything works fine. So we'll come back over here. All right, now we're going to be adding data models. Okay, so in the notes folder, open models.py. So we're going to go over here to the notes folder. We're going to open models.py, and there we go. Let's create a little more room for you here to see. I'm just going to bring this over here. Makes it a little bit easier to see. Okay, so we have models.py. It says create a class called notes that inherits from models.model. And this is obviously written in Python. So you can actually, if you're lazy or you're tired, you can just copy and then paste it. I'm just going to copy and paste it so that way we're moving faster. Okay. So we have models.py. Let's actually move this over here. So there we go. Okay. This gives our new class access to all the built-in functionality in models.model, right? That's what this is being passed in right here. Okay. Oh, actually, I noticed that little blue source control icon there. That just tells me that I need to save some changes that I've made so I don't violate my rule of following best practices, making commits every time you make a change. Let's do a git status, git add, period, git commit, -m, double quote, and what do? We ran the migrations. Okay, runs migrations for single quote notes, single quote app, and double quote to end it, hit enter, boom. Git push, get our changes up there, boom. Okay, cool. Back to what we were doing. We were creating a notes class. Actually, that should be changed. So I can already see here there's a typo. Create a class called notes. It's actually called note with a capital N. So that should be like that. Just to be a little more clear. And let's go ahead and make that change. Git status, or make that commit message. Git add, period, git commit, -m, double quote, amends, oops, sorry, amends, day one dot markdown file for instructions on how to add data models. Okay, end quote. And I'll do a git push. There we go. Always staying up to date in case anybody else who's using this project, or anybody else who's also working on this project will be up to speed with what I'm doing locally. Cool. So this gives our new class access to all the built-in functionality in models.model. Think about the data that we need for standard web notes functionality. We might want a title, body, some timestamps. We can use the docs to find the types of things we can add. So let's just check this out. Click open. Okay. Cool. So here are the different things we can add, huh? Let's scroll back over here. It says, think about the data that we need for standard web notes functionality, title, body, and some timestamps. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Add the following variables to the class. So just for time's sake, let's copy this. Might as well copy both of them. And I'm gonna go right over here and paste that. Remember with Python, very, very particular about the spacing. It's 4 spaces here, right? So just want to save that. So what this is saying is, so inside of a note object, it's always going to have a title. It's always going to have content. And this models.char field, like it mentioned earlier, this gives our new class access to all the built-in functionality in models.model, right? So this char field is a built-in functionality of models that comes with Django. And it takes in one argument called, or one parameter called max length, which has a default value of 200 unless you plan on setting it. So that means 200 characters at the most for your title. And then content, whatever you want your note to be, to have in it. Uses this text field method that default is blank is true, default parameter. Okay. So if we go back over here, says add any additional fields you'd like. I'm cool with those. We also need something to serve as a unique identifier for each record. We'll use something called a UUID for this. So you want to think of this as kind of like if you've ever done SQL queries, you know that each table needs to have a primary key, like a key identifier, right? So we see this down here. It says primary key is how the database tracks records. So that's what the ID is going to be used for. So first thing we're going to do is says first import the library. Once again, we can just literally copy and paste, right? To prevent from making errors. So we'll copy from UUID, import UUID4. We're gonna go right at the top here. We're gonna indent. Here we go. We'll save it. So this is allowing us to use this UUID module from UUID4 package, or sorry, other way around. The UUID4 module from the UUID package. Okay. It says second, add the field ID, right? So we want to just copy that, Command C, and we're actually going to put it at the top of the class because it's that important. So we'll save. I know this looks kind of weird. It's because everything's scrunched. Let me make it better for you here. There you go. All right. So as you can see here, now it's just telling us what's happening inside of the UUID field method. It takes in 3 parameters, primary key, which equals true. We want the database to keep track of the different records by using an ID that will automatically increment by itself. And then default UUID 4 just says that it's going to use this specific function to randomly generate a unique identifier. And I guess there's multiple functions you could use. You could use UUID 3, but 4 is the one that we're going to be using. As you can see there, it says, whoops, right there. See, it says generate a random UUID. So that's what that does. Okay. And then editable is set to false because we never want to change the key, which is going to be the unique identifier, right? Put at the top of the list of fields because it's sort of like the index for the record. Boom. Next, we need to tell the project that the app exists. So open settings.py from the project folder. So before we do that, let's save. Let's go over here. Let's follow best practices. Git status, git add, git commit -m, and we're going to put creates a single quote, capital NOTE, note class in the, and I like to be super specific, I'm sorry, a little OCD, I guess you can call it. So we're going to put single quote dot /, right? That indicates our root folder. Or that indicates, I guess, our current folder. So actually it should be like this, right? Yeah, so that means going out of, because we're currently in the, wait, where are we? No, we're in the, yeah, we are inside the root folder down here in this terminal. So this actually should just be one dot / notes directory / models.py. It's kind of excessive to be this specific. I like to be excessive. I don't know why. Just makes me sleep better at night knowing that my commit messages are as descriptive as possible. So file. So then we will close that with double quotes, hit enter, git push to push those changes. Awesome. All right. Next, we need to tell the project that the app exists. Open settings.py from the project. So we'll open settings.py from the project. So our project directory is called Django example. So we'll go in there. We'll go to settings.py. There we go. And now it says, find the section for installed apps and add single quote notes and single quote or other apps as appropriate. So let's just copy that. And we're going to scroll down and we're going to look for installed apps. There it is right there. Okay. And just like I said, we're just going to find that installed apps section and then we're just going to add notes. Right. So we're going to hit enter, copy, and then just make sure we have a comma there to make sure that we're not running in with this next item in the array. Let's hit save. Let's follow best practice. Git status, git add, period, git commit -m, double quote, adds, single quote, notes app to the installed _apps section of the settings.py file in the this might be excessive, in the project directory. Okay, git push. So yeah, just getting used to always committing and pushing your changes is a really, really good habit to make. Shows you're concerned about like the future and about readability for other people as well. If you have clear messages, clear commit messages, that is. Okay, says in the console check for migrations again with .manage show migrations. the Notes app should show up in the list now, but it has no migrations. So let's try that. So let's copy this. Okay, Command C. We're going to come over here to a terminal that has the intro to Django with the parentheses in the front, indicating that we're in the virtual environment. So let's close out of this so you can see it a little bit easier. There you go. So I'm going to hit Command V, copy that or paste that in there. And it's just the ./manage.py show migrations command. I enter. Notice it does exactly what it says. It says Notes has no migrations, but all of these other apps that we have, they have their migrations and they've already been run, just like we did earlier when we ran those commands. But notice here it says Notes and we don't have any migrations. Sessions is also there. So it says Notes app should show up in the list now, but it has no migrations. To generate the migrations, run this command, ./manage.py make migrations. So copy that with Command C, come over here to the same terminal, Command V, and we'll hit enter. Check that out. Migrations for Notes are being run. Boom. So we created a model note. That's the migration. And then it says, if you get an error that there are no changes to make, double check that you have saved models.py. Well, we know I saved it because I was save and make commits frequently, which is a good practice to do. Line 234 here, show migrations again to make sure they appear, then do the migration. Okay, so it says show migrations again to make sure they appear. So we'll just run the same command, show migrations. So this command right here, right? Copy C, or actually we just go to that terminal and just hit the up arrow, and that will give us access to all the different commands we've already run. So there's show migrations. Hit enter. So we do have a migration error, but it isn't run yet because there's no X, right? But we do see that it is there, whereas before, if you scroll up, look, no migrations. But when we ran that make migrations command right here, that allowed us to make a migration, which shows up right here. Okay, so now it says to generate migrations, run ./manage.py make migrations. Boom. So we'll just copy that, come over here to the terminal. Actually, you know what? I just made a change, so gotta stick with best practices. Git status, git add period, git commit -m, and we just, what do? We made some migrations, right? Yeah, we did make migrations. Actually, what we're trying to do next is we're actually trying to migrate them. We've already made the migrations. Okay, so let's do that. So let's write that in our message. So creates, actually better, verb would be makes migrations for the single quote Notes and single quote app. Yeah. Now do git push. Boom. There we go. And it says here, if you get an error that no changes to make, double check that you've saved them. We did. Show migrations again to make sure they appear, then do the migration. We already checked that right here. We can see that Notes has a migration now, whereas before it didn't. Right here, it didn't have it before. Now it does. Cool. And it says just run the migration. So we'll just run this command right here, which is ./manage.py migrate. So since we haven't run that command yet, we'll just paste that in there, hit enter, operations to perform, apply all these migrations. Thank you, Django. And then run them. There it goes. It runs that first migration, this first and only migration, which is, remember, just a collection of SQL commands that Django runs on your behalf. Cool. So it just like made that table for us. Now we have adding data with the Python shell. Okay, so manage.py has its own shell. Run ./manage.py shell to bring up a Python replet. Python replet. REPL stands for read, eval, print, loop. Think of that as like your REPL.it, that website that we use. It's kind of like a sandbox environment, allows you to run things. So anyways, we're gonna copy this command, /manage.py shell, copy it, come over here, put it in this terminal. Make sure you're in a terminal that has the parentheses Intro-Django parentheses in front of your, I guess your, what would you call that? Like your machine's name, I guess. And then you'll paste it in there. Enter. And now we're running Python 3.8 replet. It says import the notes class into the REPL. So literally just copy this right here. So from notes.models, import note. So let's copy that, paste it into the REPL. Hit enter, and then it takes you to the next line. It says create a new note. So what we're doing is creating a new instance of the note class, right? So the note class is like the template. An example would be like if you're creating a player in a video game. If you've ever played like Xbox 360, NBA Live, like, you create your own player. Well, when that machine is creating a new player, it has to go off of a template. And so that class that we made in the Notes app, in the models.py file, this is the template. That would be like a template for the basketball player that you're creating in NBA Live. So instead of class note, it would say class player. And then you have to pass in certain characteristics that you want that new player to have, right? But for this example, we're making a new note. So as we talked about before, if you go to the models.py class here, so every note is going to have these characteristics. It's going to have an ID, it's going to have a title, and it's going to have a content. This ID, since the primary key, it's automatically going to update for you. You don't have to worry about it. You just have to worry about the title and the content parameters. So as you can see over here in the example they give you, they're telling you to create a new note with this command right here. So you literally just have to copy and paste. So we'll copy it. We'll come over here to the replet, Python replet that we made earlier. Command V, right? So read this again. N equals note, capital N, right? Which says, bring me that template. And then we're passing in specific, I guess, specific attributes of the instance that we're making. So like if we were creating a player, this would be like capital P player, and then like title would be like name, and then in parentheses it'd be like Tico, and then content could be like, I don't know, team, and then I'd pass in like Golden State Warriors, But for this example, they're just putting example as the title, and then for the content, they're putting this as a test. And this would generate a note, right, with the title of example and content of this is a test. So let's hit enter. Okay. So then it says over here, check by the name of your variable to make sure it works. And look at that, there's some incorrect grammar there. So there you go, make sure it worked. Cool. So it just says type in N. So we're gonna do that because you just saved all of this to the variable N. So now we'll go down here and we'll hit, we'll just type in N, letter N. You can copy and paste it if you want, if you're that tired, or you can just type it in, hit enter, and note, I said note. Notice that the object that you've created does come up. Although it comes in this form, which is, I'm assuming, the location of the object in memory, it is the object that we created here, where we called it example. We gave it a title example, and we gave it the content. This is a test. So the object does exist that we created. Awesome. And it says here, we can use a built-in function from models, which Note inherited from, to save this to the database. How cool is that? So we have this Python replet open here. And what we're doing is we're saving this thing that we just created in the replet, read eval print loop. We're saving that to the database. That is so dope. Copy that, paste that bad boy. So n.save, n referring to the object instance that you created, and then .save, it's a method that you're inheriting from, or that you're allowed to use from the models, built-in models. Okay, so we'll just Command V to paste, we'll hit enter, and boom, that is now, this object is now saved to the database. Okay, so this says exit the terminal, then restart it. So let's exit, and then there we go. And let's make our changes here. Let's commit our changes. Git status, git add period, git commit -m, double quote. And what do? We just created an instance, right? Creates an instance of a note in a Python REPL and saves it to the database using single quote n.save parentheses, open and close, single quote, and n double quote. And then, sorry, that's probably a long commit message. But like I said, I like to be specific because it helps me sleep better at night. Git push, all right, there we go. If we scroll down, it says we have to import the note class again using the same command as before. Okay, so to access any commands that we've used before, you can just go to the terminal. You can hit the up arrow multiple times until you get the command that you want. And the command that I want is right there. .manage.py space shell, right? Because we want to open up a REPL, Python REPL. So we're gonna hit enter. Now I got my Python REPL again. Let's create some more room for you to see here. Here's my Python REPL. Now it says you have to import it again, right? It says we have to import the note class again using the same command as before. Here's our import statement from notes.models, import note. So we'll just copy that, paste it right in there again. That allows us access to the note class from the notes.models file. So we'll scroll down. And it says there's another built-in method that will retrieve all existing objects of a class, right? So since we've created an object for that class with the other REPL, when we use this command note.objects.all, it will give us access and retrieve all of those object instances for us. So let's copy that. Let's paste it in here in the REPL. Whoops. That did not, I didn't actually copy that from over there, sorry. Let's go back over here, let's copy note.objects.all, copy, and Command V to paste. There we go. So query set, it brought back that same object that we created from earlier, right? So let's 75C3, that's right there, 75C389FO. So it is the same exact object that we created from before. It says use this to save the data back into a variable named B in Explorer. So we can do that by doing B equals, and then we'll paste in note.objects.all again. And then if we try B, we can see that we did save it. There it is, there's that query set. That's been set to the variable B like they asked you to do over here. It says in Explorer. So let's do git, oops, sorry. Come over here, we're gonna do a git status. Oh, we didn't make any changes. Cool, because that was in the REPL. But the database did have a change made to it, and that was the fact that we created this object instance. All right, moving on. Moving the secret key to .env. Now, .env, if you've never used .env before, just stands for environment. The dot, whenever you have a file in your repo or your root directory, and it has dot in front of it, that's just a way to hide files. Those files wouldn't normally show up if you are opening them in like like your native terminal, unless you type in the command ls space -a, which would list all of the files. And it's just kind of there to protect the contents of these files, which are probably super important, which is why they're hidden. So anyways, the secret key, that obviously it's important, right? So we want to store it inside the .env. So currently right now they're saying that it's stored inside of settings.py, right? So if we go here to our Django example project, we go to settings.py, we scroll down, you can see secret key right there is currently being shared. That means that it's on GitHub right now because I've been making commits. Security warning, keep the secret key used in production secret, right? So we haven't done that yet. So that's what we're trying to do here on the day1.md file. So we want to move this out of the settings file so that it doesn't get checked into source control, where it would get pushed up to GitHub, our GitHub remote, and then people would have access to it. We don't want to do that, right? So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to be using something called Python decouple. This module or this package will allow us to have access to it from the .env file, which we're going to create in the root directory. And then Python decouple is going to be able to pull that out and put it into our anywhere into our files that would require the use of a secret key without exposing it to the public on our GitHub. Okay. So first thing we want to do, let's exit out of this to make it easier. Let's do that so it's easier to see. Okay, so take a look at the secret key in settings.py. I'm gonna move it, cool. We're gonna make use of a module called Python decouple by installing it in the virtual environment. So let's exit out of this replit that we have over here. Exit, parentheses, open and close. And we know that we're in the virtual environment because we have the open and close parentheses and Intro-Django there in front of Tico tap, name of my machine. So it says pip env install Python decouple. Copy that to make it easy on yourself so you don't spell things incorrectly. Command V to paste, and we'll hit enter. So it says courtesy notice PPD file software within virtual environment, so we'll automatically use that environment instead of creating its own for any project. You can set PPD ignore virtual environment 1 to force you can ignore the environment and create its own. You can set PPD browser 1, press warning. Okay, so it looks like it successfully installed Python decouple, and it adds it to the pip file list of packages, right? And once again, this just keeps track of everything that you're using in this exact environment in case somebody would want to download your repo and recreate the same experience on their local machine. It would tell them like what exact packages that you used so they could reproduce that same environment on their machine. Okay. So it says once it's installed, we can bring it into settings.py with Python with from decouple import config. But let's follow best practice. Git status, git add period, git commit -m, and we're going to say installs single quote Python -decouple single quote end package and end double quote. Git push I guess I didn't include the command that I used to install that. I probably should have done that. But it's just pip env install Python decouple. Okay, so once it's installed, we can bring it into the settings.py with this right here. So we'll just copy that, go to settings.py, and we'll just put it at the top right here. So we'll go underneath import OS, and we'll just paste that import statement in there. And pull up the docs for Python decouple and take a look at the usage and rationale. There's an example of how to use it with Django. Follow that to remove the key from settings. So this is the key from settings they're talking about. They're saying get rid of this because it's being exposed. And it says add the key to your env file, creating it if you have to, which let's see. We currently don't have a .env, as you can see. There's no .env, so we'll create one. And what else does it say here? Secret key equals whatever it was in the settings file. That's what you would put in your .env. Then change line in settings.py to secret key config. So this is what would be exposed in the settings.py file on GitHub. And then your .env file is, because it's hidden, and you're gonna include it here in the .gitignore. Oh, it's already included right there. What that's doing is .gitignore is also a hidden file, but this hidden file keeps track of other files that you don't want to include in source control, meaning like you don't want to include them on GitHub. They're just sitting there on your local machine, and you have access to them on your local machine, right? So go back to day1.markdown file. So let's do that. Let's save this first. Git status, git add period, git commit -m, open double quote, and we just made an import statement, right? So we'll say imports config module from the decouple package. And double quote, git push. There you go. Cool. Okay, so now we just want to pull up the docs. So let's go search for Python decouple docs. Python decouple. Click that. Project description, Python decouple, strict separation of settings from code. Decouple helps you to organize your settings so that you can change parameters without having to redeploy your app. Also makes it easy for you to store parameters in ini or .env files. That's what we talked about before. Define comprehensive default values. Properly convert values to the correct data type. This is super important, and I'll show you why. So we scroll back up here. Reason why is so the specific file type, or sorry, specific data type. So if you use like with .env files, you can import them using like the .env package. But the only thing is it always will interpolate whatever is stored inside the .env file as a string, just defaults to a string. So like if I have this secret key right here and it's inside my .env and I guess I'm interpolating it or bringing it in via this Python decouple package, what's happening is that it's going to return it as a string, and it, in this case it is supposed to be a string, but in other cases, like if like this debug right here, like if you have this, it's supposed to return a Boolean value, I guess, a bool value in Python, right? It's not Boolean. Boolean's JavaScript, but if it returns this this using the .env package, what happens is it will return true as a string, which is not the same as true when you type it like this. So that's what this Python decouple does for us. Is it interpolates the value of the .env the .env whatever value into the area that you want to like pull it into. It will interpolate it in the same data type. So if it's supposed to be a bool, then it will be interpolated as a bool over in this other file, if that makes sense. Let's go back over here. Have only one configuration module to rule all your instances. That would be nice. Okay, so let's see. Oh, here's right there where they tell you why not just use environmental variables. Yeah, because strings and then other data types are not the same. Okay, so this tells you an example of how to use it. It says pip install Python decouple. We've done that. We actually used pip env, I believe. Yep, we use pip env install Python decouple. So we don't have to do that. Then use it on your settings.py. Import the config object from decouple import config. We did that from decouple import config in our settings.py. Retrieve the configuration parameters. So the secret key, we're going to pass in secret key like this, which will reference the .env file that we're going to make. And so that way, instead of putting your secret key out there for everyone to see in the public, they'll just see this config passing in the value of secret key from the .env file. So let's do that. Let's just copy these top two because I'm not sure if we have email host and email port in ours, but we'll just do this. We'll just copy these top two. We'll come over here and let's move this out of the way. So just like I mentioned, we want to get rid of this right here, right? Because this is being exposed. So let's hit indent. Let's copy these things here. Okay. And then what needs to happen next is we need to create a .env file. So we'll right click, new file, .env to hold our environmental variables. And we're gonna go back to settings. We are going to take this and we're gonna cut it out of there. And we're gonna put it in the .env. And then with this, you don't have any spaces. So we'll just do it like that. And let's move this over like this. There you go. See, so there's no spaces between the equal sign, the variable name, and the value. No spaces. We'll go back to settings.py. We want to get the debug value too. So that's this right here. So we can just cut that as well. As well delete this comment and that comment. Okay, we'll go back to our .env and I just cut the value of debug. So it's indent, Command V to paste. Just need to get rid of those spaces. Once again, the Python decouple, it will allow us to interpolate this when it brings it into the settings.py file as a bool value true versus it being a string like this, which is what happens when you use the environment variable package. So we'll just use true like that. Okay. And go here. says then change inline settings to secret key. We've done that right here. We should also move debug to config file. Because the file is a string and debug expects a bool, we need to cast it. So casting it, telling it we want it to be a Boolean value, right? So we did that. And actually we put false here, and that was based on the example that was provided here in the docs. Default value of false. But let's just go with what they have here, because that's specific to our project. So we'll just copy that in there like that. All right, it says we do not do this for security, but so that it can be changed as needed on a development machine without modifying the source code. So meaning like, so everybody on their own machine is going to have a .env file that does not get pushed to your GitHub remote repository. This .env file is something that is only found on local machines if it's included in the git ignore. So that's super important that's included in here. If it is not included in here in this git ignore, it will show up in source control and in your Git repository, and people have access to it. So it defeats the whole purpose of what we're doing. So you need to make sure that's inside of the git ignore. Okay. So we'll go back to settings here. Let's make some commits. So the changes that we just made are we basically moved our keys, our key and our debug values into a .env file so they wouldn't be exposed. So let's go down here to this terminal, bash terminal, git status. Oh, sorry, I'm getting tired now. I'm not spelling things right. Git status, git add period, git commit -m, open the double quote, and we'll say moves the secret underscore key value and the debug, oh, I spelled debug wrong, debug value from the single quote open settings.py file and puts them in a .env file and double quote. Git push. You can do any git message, any git commit message that you want. Like I said, I like to be super specific. Okay. So if you go back to the markdown file, so you can see here, like anytime you see grayed out names of files, that means that they are not included in source control. So your .venv should not be included because, oh man, like every time you make a commit, it'd be like a huge commit. So many files are changed within your virtual environment all the time. And then your .env should also be grayed out for your environmental variables, holds all of the valuable information that you don't want to show to the public. Whoops. Let's go back to the day one MD file. And then it says, don't forget to add it to the env. We did that. Test to make sure it still works and debug is needed. So let's test our server to make sure it's still running. So we go to this top terminal here and we hit the up arrow. We can find the /manage.py run server command, hit enter. And it says it is running just fine. Watching for files with stat reloader, performing system checks. System check identified no issues. It is running. Let's just go and make sure. So we'll click on localhost 8000, hit enter. Look, and it is running, no problem. And we can see, look, we're hitting that server with our GET requests. I hit enter there. Cool. Last thing in this day1.md file, in case you've already committed a key earlier in accident, happens, I did, you can just generate a new one in any Python replit like we did earlier using this command here, or using these statements here. So you would just do it like this. So we go here. Let's hit up until we get manage.py shell to get our REPL going. And then it just says that we want to copy this exact command here. Oops. Just make it easy. Yeah. Looks like it's all actually in one line. So if I close, or if I bring this over here, it'd be easier to see for you. Day one. Okay, so this whole thing is on one line, and the import statement is right above it. So we just want to do, yeah, just like that. And we'll hit Command C to copy, come over here, Command V to paste, and watch this. You hit enter, boom. It creates a brand new secret key for you right here. So you can actually take that, because remember the old key, the thing that they're passing in are like basically what it can create a new key for you from. So it'll use all these characters, like the whole alphabet, numbers 0 through 9, and then some of these like non-alphanumeric characters. And it creates like this jumbled randomized version so that nobody can guess your secret key. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go over to .env, and I'm just going to paste it in here, because now this will be a key that's different from the one that I already accidentally pushed to my repo. So Command V, and notice that changes there, .env. But so that changes here, and you notice that like the source control icon here in VS Code, there's no like blue icon there. It's because we changed something, but we changed something that was included in the git ignore file, which tells Git to ignore it and don't upload it to the remote branch, because then people would have access to it and it'd be exposed. So there you go. Just completed day one, that markdown of the intro to Django. So hopefully that helps you. Tune in for the next video as we go through Markdown Day 2, Admin Interface and SQL. Thanks.